Well, hello,
Good
everyone.
morning.
Hello,
I guess,
Dr. Cook.
yeah, it's morning somewhere. Good evening everywhere
That's
else.
right. Morning for us. Well, hey, everyone. Welcome to our monthly A Call with Dr. Cook. I can't even believe it that we're already on part five of our five-part series focusing around our quality of life domains. That went fast.
Yeah, and it's a good thing there aren't 20 parts to quality of life.
That's right. Well, today we will be discussing the physical domain. So excited for this.
And Cami, I'm going to start by sharing my screen,
All right.
bring up a PowerPoint.
There you go.
There we go. Should we dive in?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, here we are. Limbic Arc is a device that is designed to improve the quality of life. And quality of life is broken down into five parts. And today we're going to be talking about the physical domain, but you can't really separate these domains distinctly. You can't say, oh, I'm just going to improve my physical life, but not anything else, because there's a spillover. And the power of limbic arc is that it really is a center out technology. Uh, every time you turn on an InfoBoost, you even though it may be focused on one area, it's going to have an effect on every other area. And the reason that is the case is because the currency of limbic arc is information. And if you look at the limbic arc model, what we call the limbic arc model, information sits at the top of that. And information is what is conveyed by an arrangement of things. So the words on the screen, obviously, this is in English, but in English, this arrangement of shapes will convey something, and what it conveys is the information. Well, information then determines or will craft or shape our beliefs, and our beliefs become the frame through which we see life, and that vision of life is really called our perception. So I see things in a way that are congruous with my beliefs. And that is my perception. If someone else had a different belief, they could see the same thing, but they would perceive it differently and it would have a different effect. Well, perception then leads to intent, and intent directs energy. And in Chinese medicine, it's called qi. And when we get to the energy part, it then breaks into two different directions. The energy moves in two directions. The first direction is it will change your energy posture, and your energy posture determines what's called your field. You might think of your energy posture as almost your character. Um, I have a friend who has the ability to see auras. And so when he looks at someone, he actually sees colors around them in different areas. And he's really pretty good at it. He was born with the ability to do it. When he was a kid, they thought he was weird. Now he's got a better idea of what it is. Over the years, he's realized, oh, this is really a gift, and he uses it to his advantage. He can see a person's energy posture essentially. But your energy posture then creates your field, and your field is your sphere of influence. That's another definition of it. And your field is the position that you occupy in the informational substrate out of which all reality emerges. And that's sometimes called the 0 point field. So information, you can see the downstream flow will actually change how I relate to everything else in the universe. Well, the other direction that energy flows is in the more physical way. And I for several years been involved with energy medicine. And, when you stick a needle in somebody in the right place, you'll get an energy response. And one of the ways you judge if you're getting an energy response is you look for blood to congeal around the needle. And it's not like it starts to bleed. It just turns a little pink around the needle, and sometimes it's dramatic. But that tells you, yes, I've got a good energy connection at this particular point where I've inserted the needle, because blood follows chi, blood follows the energy. And then the next thing that happens is that the influence then cascades down to other body fluids, and from there it cascades to tissue. So this is kind of an aside, but when you start to get sick, you'll feel you're getting sick before you actually show symptoms of a sickness. And the feeling you get is your energy moving into a discoherent position, and you actually feel that. And when you start to get better, you say, oh, I feel like I'm getting better. And that's your energy moving back to the balanced position, and then all of these other things follow. And when you use information, it will impact energy very quickly, but it may take a little while for that information and that energy shift to be reflected in physical tissue. Now, where limbic arc comes into this is we have the ability to intercept perception, and we do that by using voice. When you create a spark, to run a spark scan with limbic arc, the first thing we ask you to do is to talk about what you want the outcome to be, or what you want what problem you're having that you want to solve. And it only takes 10 seconds of voice energy, and we can decode your perception and find out what areas of perception do you lack information. Then the next thing we do is we have you do what's called a tactile response, or an evoked potential response, and that gives us two pieces of real-time biometric data, which is then placed through a mathematical process. It's placed in conjunction with the scanning algorithm inside Limbic Arc, and we sort the library, and that gives you an idea of, well, this information is going to be more helpful than that information, and you select that which scores higher usually, and then you activate an InfoBoost. When you activate the InfoBoost, we put that information into your field, and it becomes available to you at a subconscious level, and you incorporate it, and it will have an effect on this entire cascade. Now, what we want to focus on today is how that InfoBoost, that is from the center out, how that InfoBoost affects the physical domain of quality of life. And I think that most limbic arc users probably approach limbic arc from this point of view. And the reason is because the library contains things that we're familiar with that we use in the physical world to help us with physical problems. So you might have echinacea, that's in our library. And echinacea as an herb is used to stimulate immunity. That's one of its purposes. And so when you look at that, you might say, oh, I'm going to put in echinacea in my InfoBoost because I need to improve my immunity. And so our intent then gets focused on the physical side of it, and we don't realize that echinacea, and particularly the information of echinacea, can have an effect on every other domain. But today we're going to be talking about the physical domain. So there we are. That's the graphic. Isn't that cool?
He's great.
Well, when we talk about physical, most of us think really sometimes we think of physical in the same way that dentists and doctors and psychiatrists think that the teeth and the body and the brain are three distinct, separate parts of the body, as opposed to, no, they're just integrated parts. And what you do with your teeth is going to affect your brain and your body and every other direction. So there's a lot of things going on uh, when it comes to the physical domain. But what is health and what is physical? Well, the first thing it is if you're healthy, you have the ability to do things and to do hard things like climb a mountain. And when you get sick, because everybody gets sick, that's just part of being mortal, health is really the ability to bounce back so that you can get back in the gym. And if you're unhealthy, then you lack that resilience. And that's not what we want. We want resilience. Well, in order to maintain that resilience, there's all kinds of things that have to happen. And all of the internal organs, all of the internal functions that go on in keeping us resilient and strong and coherent require a lot of communication. There's cell communication goes on all the time. And if that communication breaks down, then we become unhealthy. And the communication takes place through the transmission of chemicals, but it's also done through photons, through particles of light that carry information or that stimulate certain responses inside our cells. This is a picture of a cell, at least a cross section, and you can see the cell membrane there is made up of a kind of a crystalline type structure. Those are fat molecules. It's called a bilayer of fat, and the way the cell membrane is built, it facilitates communication. They act kind of like little crystal radios. They also have gates, and so chemicals get in and out. And it's not just all about energy or information, it's about chemistry, but even the chemistry carries information because the structure and organization of every chemical is different and unique. And that structure, that arrangement of things will carry meaning, and that meaning then becomes critical to overall health. Now, let's talk about this little guy right here. This is inside a cell. That's called a mitochondria. And mitochondria are built, they're kind of an on-demand component of the inside of the cell. The mitochondria is where what's called ATP gets built. And ATP is the energy that actually allows us to move, that drives all of the other functions in our body. And so the woman who is climbing up the hill, she's exerting more energy. Well, the cells of her muscles will create more mitochondria because she needs more energy. And these guys, you can have just a few in your cell, and you can have thousands of them in a cell. So they're small because they fit inside a cell. And here's a better look at it. These guys are cool because they're incredible powerhouses. If you could get yourself small enough to fit inside one of your mitochondria, you would get electrocuted because the energy inside these is just overwhelming. Pound for pound, you make more energy than the sun. And in the course of a day, you will produce approximately your body weight in ATP. Now, I don't know how that's exactly measured because ATP is energy, and I don't know how you weigh energy, but you make a tremendous amount of energy because it takes a tremendous amount of energy to, run your life. And these are the guys that do it. But they don't do it alone. It requires cooperation it requires communication, it requires information across the whole continuum of your body. Another interesting thing about the physical domain is we are not just reactive robots. We are actually predictive, and the your brain will anticipate the most appropriate response before the response is actually needed. They did an experiment years ago. I say they, I think it was a university in California. And I don't remember exactly the experiment, but this is what they found out. They measured brainwave function, and then they had their research participant, they presented the research participant with a stimulus, and then they had to choose a response. It was either A or B. And what they found was the brain would respond about a quarter of a second before the finger would choose A or B. And and during that half second was the point of decision, because the brain would respond and sometimes the decision would go the other direction, but you could change your mind in that length of time. So we're always predicting and making choices in the way our physical body moves and responds. And you can see from this picture, crossing a road, reaching out and touching something, what kind of food are you going to eat? All of those things are just examples of input that actually predict future behavior, or upon which we predict future behavior. Now, the way this slide is representative of what's called the autonomic nervous system. Most of the behavior that we evoke, and most of the decisions that we make, and most of the input that drives our whole existence is handled at a subconscious level. It's handled autonomically. I don't have to think about my digestive system. I don't have to think about my respiration. I don't have to think about, honestly, I don't have to think about my beliefs, because all of that is ingrained in me at a subconscious level, and my perception is going to drive my behavior either in an acute way or in a chronic way. And here's a picture that illustrates this. The woman at the top is in trouble. She has encountered an animal, and from the looks of that animal, she's, going to get attacked. Well, her perception is this is a dangerous animal, and she's going to act accordingly. That's an acute stress. It creates stress, but it's an acute one. Now, if she knew that wolf, I guess is what it is, a big mean dog, huh?
I call her Wolf.
Yeah. Maybe that wolf is the pet of a trapper who lives up in the mountains in this area. And maybe he's really kind, but he just comes across scary because she's, getting close to one of the traps he's protecting. I don't know. But if she had that information, she may say, "Oh, hey, take it easy, big fella," and she might even reach her hand out to see if he would calm down. But the information creates the response as it's filtered through her perception of what this situation holds. Now, the woman on the bottom, that's a picture of a woman with chronic stress. And stress can be our friend, like in the picture at the top. It's going to help this woman get out of the way faster. Stress in the bottom picture is not our friend, because what happens is this. Let me go to the next slide. Stress is handled primarily through what's called the HPA axis. That H stands for hypothalamus, and that's the little green thing at the very top where there's a green arrow pointing right to it. That's in your brain, and that's an endocrine gland that emits certain chemicals, but it also receives certain signals. And a lot of the communication from the hypothalamus goes to the through the blue arrow there. You see it's pointing to that little round dot. That's the pituitary, and the pituitary excretes, I think, about 9 hormones, and those hormones then will tell the adrenal glands, and that's shown with the red arrow, when to excrete cortisol or adrenaline, and that determines your stress response. It's kind of like a thermostat in the house. You can set the temperature to be a certain temperature, and if it gets too hot, the air conditioner comes on, and if it gets too cold, the heater comes on. Well, this this HPA axis, the adrenal hypothalamus pituitary chain, flows forwards and backwards. It has a negative feedback loop built into it. And so if you're not under stress, then your cortisol level goes down. And if you're under stress all the time, then your cortisol level is too high. And the woman in the picture before, because she is under chronic stress, you can see that she's up at 3 o'clock in the morning. She's having a hard time sleeping because your cortisol level is supposed to drop before you go to bed so you can go to sleep. And then it rebuilds, it recharges through the night, and you wake up and your cortisol level is high. So you get out of bed and you're bouncy and ready to go conquer the world. Well, if you are in a perpetual high stress situation, then your cortisol level is going to be all whacked and you're going to have a hard time sleeping and you're going to wake up tired and you just don't feel good. Okay. So the management of stress is part of the whole health issue, and it's driven by information. It's easy to see how it's driven by information. Another key element in health is inflammation. So here's our woman, and she's got a cut on her hand, and you can see the red around that cut. That's an indication that her immune system has kicked in, and part of the immune response is to inflame the area so that you accelerate the bringing in of the immune cells that will attack any kind of an invader that gets in through the cut in her skin and will kill those guys, the bad guys, and carry them away. And in order for that to happen, you have to have more active blood flow. And so the area gets inflamed by certain chemicals, and the blood then and the lymphatic system can then transport those good guys in and the bad guys out. However, inflammation, again, is one of those things that is our friend, but too much of it is not our friend. So you may know somebody, or you may have chronic low back pain. This is something that's common. And chronic back pain is caused by chronic inflammation, because if you have back problems, your body is always going to be inflaming that area in an attempt to correct the problem. And that inflammation then becomes problematic because it's kind of a destructive process if it goes on for too long. Now, what can cause chronic low back pain? Well, maybe she hurt herself in the gym, or maybe she's got some kind of a digestive problem, or maybe she's grieving. Maybe somebody died, and she's just grieving. And low back pain will show up because of that. Maybe she's stressed over finances. That also has an effect on low back pain. And maybe she's had an argument with somebody she loves, and so now her back is just giving her problems. All of those things can cause low back pain. And if those things persist, for example, if she has a digestive problem and it goes unaddressed, that digestive problem can result in perpetual subluxations in the lumbar region, and she'll have back problems. So what can she do about it? Well, She can drink more water. She can get more sleep, eat a better diet, find out what's causing her digestive problems. Maybe she gets a little acupuncture. I had to put that in, Cami, because that's
Of course.
that's always good.
Yep.
Um, really in my clinical experience, probably the most common thing that people came to see me about is back pain. Um, but massage helps, better posture helps, proper exercise helps, all of those things, and including things like meditation, because all of the inputs, we've got the music coming in from the guitar on the left, and we've got in the lower uh, right, there's an image that kind of denotes purpose in life. If you have a stronger purpose in life, that makes you healthier. If you have love and connection and acceptance, all of those things, sunlight, it all plays into it. And everything about those elements are, they originate with information. And that's why the InfoBoost carries so much horsepower. It's because you may create an InfoBoost for your chronic low back pain, and in the course of the InfoBoost being active, the solution to your problem is non-physical. In other words, it might be you just have a realization that, oh, I'm not getting along with this person that I love, and I need to correct that. And you correct that, and all of a sudden your low back pain goes away. So information, because it's at the top of that chain, has a profound impact all the way down. The other cool thing about our bodies is they're coherent meters. In other words, when my conscious and my subconscious are coherent, I'll feel it. It's described as the Zen moment sometimes, or I'm in the zone, or this makes sense and it feels right. So we have that ability. It's just we're born with it. And if we're decoherent, like she is on the right, then we feel that dissonance. And sometimes you may hear somebody say something. I'm getting back to voice and the value of voice. Voice carries an incredible amount of information beyond the words that are spoken. And we've all had the experience, I would expect, where we hear somebody talking and we go, that doesn't feel right. Well, the reason you get that feeling is because what is being said and what is being carried in the voice that is not said, those are out of sync, and you feel that dissonance because you are a coherent meter. So we take advantage of that with Limbic Arc, because as we provide information, it helps us move back to a position of coherence. And that's one of the ways you feel, yes, Limbic Arc is working. So her back pain may be caused from a number of factors, and Limbic Arc, because of the information it provides, can have an effect on that. And I'm sure, people on the call today who use Limbic Arc because when they turned on the InfoBoost the first time, their headache went away, or their back pain went away, or something physical happened to them that was significant enough that they could easily attribute it to Limbic Arc. Now, that being said, Limbic Arc is not a medical device. We don't have enough research to say this will identify or cure anything. We just can't say that. We can say that it's designed to improve the quality of life, but it's not designed to diagnose or treat any medical condition. Now, my personal belief is that the whole information paradigm, this whole concept of information having a top-down cascading effect, is what I call the tip of the sword in medicine. I think in the future, we will find that information as we're using it with Limbic Arc will become beneficial and recognized as being beneficial in circles that now consider it heresy. But we're not there yet. The goal with Limbic Arc is really to help each of us establish a greater balance and a greater coherence in our lives. And because we are maybe more in touch with our physical bodies than we are our spiritual bodies or our mental bodies, the physical side is an easy place for people to get started with Limbic Arc. And so there's our woman. She's happy, she's balanced, and she's running on all five cylinders. I guess you could have a five-cylinder engine. But that's my last slide, Cami.
Great presentation. Vaughn, I think all of us on this call could have some of a point in time when we've experienced low back pain, use that as an example. And you kind of scratch your head and go, why do I have this weird low back pain? But so many things can impact that. It's just not, I pull a muscle or something.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, great
Yeah,
example.
health is a fascinating thing because it really is integrative.
Yeah.
And so let me tell you a quick clinical story. And this story isn't unique. The story was common. People would come into the clinic and they would say, well, I don't know where else to go, and I'd say, well, thanks for coming here. Or I should have said maybe, well, oh, so I'm your
Last
last
resort.
choice.
Yeah.
But they would say, yeah, I went here and here and here, and they tell me the doctors and the clinics, and they've flown all over the world and spent lots of money, and I do an intake with them, and their problem just becomes glaringly obvious. And it's not because I'm smarter than all those other places they've been. It's because of perception, because of the information that I had that other holistic energy medicine practitioners had, but looking at a patient through the lens of that information gave me a perception of them that other people didn't have. And so it would be, oh, this is the problem from an energetic point of view. And we would then address that. And within 2-3 weeks, these people would be better. And they would say, holy smokes, why didn't I come here first?
Right.
And the answer is, well, you probably had to learn something along the way, and here you are.
Yeah.
But perception makes a significant difference. Perception can make all the difference. And that's because we live our lives through this frame of belief that creates our perceptions.
So true. Yes.
Anyway, that is the physical domain.
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed this entire series, just getting to have a better understanding of our 5 quality of life domains and the connection back to Limbic Arc technology.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you can't wait to learn what you have for us next month.
Oh, I'm sure it'll be fun.
That's
At least
right.
for me.
Well, thank you. And thank you
Thanks,
to
Cami.
everyone who joined us today. Thank you for
Thanks,
being with us.
everybody. See you all
Bye-bye.
soon.